like to think that I'm a pretty charismatic dude, but tonight I sat down to try to make map 2 of my fun custom thing that I was going on, trying to make this phone game. And I did it, I made map 2, but while I was doing it, I noticed two things. One, the video of me making it took 30 minutes because the map editor that I was using, this old program that I had made years ago, had a really horrible bug I didn't remember. And I was getting really frustrated at this bug. And I thought, why are there bugs in my map editor? This is 2020. There shouldn't be bugs. So when I got to the end of the video, I did make this new level 2. It's kind of fun, but the video wasn't very good because I feel like I wasn't my usual charismatic self. I was just saying up, up, up a whole lot of times in the video. I was kind of like tired, I guess. And so I went to look for the source code. I thought, where's the source code in my map editor? And I went to look for the source code of this because I haven't interacted with this project in a really long time. I've looked it up mostly as a joke to try to make fun of Blizzard's Warcraft mobile thing. And I went and looked for the source code of this, and it turns out it was stored in a Mercurial repo on Bitbucket that Bitbucket deleted because they don't support Mercurial. And it was stored on a Git repo run by a friend of mine in college, and his server's gone now because it was on his Raspberry Pi, which he probably unplugged in the last 5 or 10 years. So I'm digging through all these old archives of my files, and I'm trying to figure out, dude, where are my files? Where is my level editor for this Pac-Man game thing? I don't know. Maybe it's not Pac-Man because that's copyrighted. I actually had a version of it at one point I was working on where I changed the guy into this little green dino, and it was called Dino Dine. Obviously, it's just a concept. You just be creative. Be creative. I drew all the art for it, but it is kind of like it started off looking like Pac-Man. And I kind of feel like when I'm going through all these old files and this old stuff looking for this code repo, it's kind of like seeing your ghosts, your past, dude. Like, how do I describe what I just saw? I saw this really interesting reminder. In some of these folders, as I go back and I look at 2015, what was really going on? Did I have the new version in 2015? Where's my game from then? The summer of 2015 was an interesting year. It was a really interesting year because that summer I got an internship working with really bright software developers. And I went to work. We're sitting in this room together, all these other bright software developers, and they would sit and they would talk about what are the ideal ways to build and design your code. And we got closer and closer to sort of thinking through these things. And they gave me all kinds of advice and questions on things where, I was above the bar of what they were looking for. But they had people who were happy to sit and talk about, okay, so you're above the bar. That's great. But not only are you above the bar, what about these other things? And so I was sitting and talking to these people who had 10 or 15 years of software development experience where that was all they did every single day. And, when I was in college, like there were times I would kind of be show-offy to people, but it's a whole nother level to interact with somebody who's been sitting at a computer developing software every hour of every day for 10 or 15 years. It's like they're on a different planet. And by the time I went back to college after that internship, I feel like I would legitimately scare people. Like prior to that, there were times sometimes I would show off to people, be a little bit of a show off with software development. Some of my projects went that way, but they didn't all go that way. And some of the times you're developing things for yourself. And in both of these cases, if you achieve a just higher efficiency of getting things done, you can do amazing stuff. And so one of the things that happened around that time that I'm seeing as I go back and look at these files, it's really, really interesting, is in 2013, from some of that show-offiness, I had started college and I was talking to my roommate, and this was like a randomly assigned roommate, but somehow I was randomly, quote unquote, assigned a roommate who was really, really good at StarCraft. So I did all this playing Warcraft and he did all this playing StarCraft. So we were good friends. I think it was a good time. But I was also kind of show-offy. So one time I realized maybe the reason this guy's studying computer science is that he thinks it would be cool to build StarCraft. And I wanted to be kind of like show that gumption of like showing off and feeling good about myself, but also kind of making a point like, dude, you could just make your own StarCraft if you want. Because we tend to think that these things are difficult. And it's like, no, it shouldn't be difficult. So having not really played StarCraft, I just decided that I would take a board game based on spaceships that I had tried to create in 2006 and automate it and make a computer game out of it. And I started on this process in 2013. I remember turning and looking to my roommate and saying, you know, I'm going to code a game. And I just started doing this stuff. And I was taking a little bit easier course load compared to what I maybe should have been. So I was in a class that was similar to the same software development things that I had studied in high school. So it was kind of like review. So I had this combination of like a little bit extra time to do stuff, and it's a little bit more like review, and a little bit show-offy, and trying to code my own like StarCrafty kind of thing. And I'm building this game. It's nothing like StarCraft, by the way. Like made it with my own art, my own like sprite engine, where you had in the map editor you could kind of customize, or not even, it wasn't even really a map editor, but there's like a texture editor thing. You could customize the characters by changing their character art, and you had to draw the sprites in the program and make these things made from like triangles that could only have 9 different colors that depended on player color and other stuff. And the really interesting thing about this is that when you start off being just, you know, doing something crazy, kind of like a moonshot like that, like I'm going to code my own game engine. Initially, you never know what you're doing. Like nobody knows what they're doing. You just decide to give it your best shot and to just do it. And so, like one of the things that was really profound to me that when I look back on it, that's incredibly stupid, is that when I was building this system, there was a logical construct in the code that, to be honest, I would just refer to it today as a unit. It's a unit in a strategy game. Like, as somebody who modded Warcraft, we've all heard that term. We know what a unit is in these games. You know, it's like a little selectable thing. You can move it around. And when I started this off, I didn't call it unit. I didn't do that. I had the board game that I made in 2006, and I was going through the documentation. And one of the things is it declared that the game was constructed of spaceships, satellites, and structures that you built on planets. And so in the board game documentation that I had come up with, like, and this is just like all on paper. And this is back when people would play like Dungeons and Dragons or something. And so I was like inventing like just like written out ideas. So on this paper ideas, I had written S/S/S as the name of this kind of thing that existed in the world. And in a board game, like it would be a grid. So these were like little minis, but I didn't have minis because I was making my own stuff up. So I think at some point I just printed out a bunch of little circular discs and cut them out with scissors or something back then. Anyway, so this is 2013. I was learning some software stuff. So I was making this and I was like, okay, what do I call this code construct? And I called it the S object. And that mucked with the code for years. Honestly, I think it was like 5 or 10 years later. Has it even been 10 years? No, maybe it was 5 years later, where I was like, okay, this needs to get refactored. I have to change this. S object should just be called unit. It's a unit in the game. It degenerated into feeling that way. That's what it was. It was a unit in a strategy game. I think we know what that is. And I finally, at some point, renamed that, changed all the code, which, you know, is honestly pretty fast to do in modern code engines if you have something that has an automatic refactor. But so anyway, where I'm going with this, the most fascinating part of it is that 2015, the summer, while I was talking to these guys, when I had started this interesting job talking to these bright programmers, at the same time, I would go home at night and what do you do in your spare time? You know, you're a master of your own decisions. And I was trying to rewrite a second version of my strategy game that I had made in 2013 and 2014 to kind of show off to my roommate. And keeping in mind that this is not like, it was a somewhat simple strategy game. It had multiplayer support, but it communicated by sending strings back and forth based on a tutorial that I found online for like how to send chat messages. This is incredibly simple stuff. And so it was just sending back and forth these little string commands originally, and everything was turn-based so that it was really easy to synchronize what was happening on the two computers. So, I mean, it had the openness and the creativity of making my own stuff, but it was its own planet as far as being simpler than if you were today, if you were like working a job and saying, I'm going to make a strategy game and everybody says it has to be 3D and whatever. This was a 2D turn-based thing, but it was really fun doing that creativity. And so that summer, that 2015 summer, I sat down and I thought through it all and I thought, you know what, I need to reinvent that. I really enjoy it. I want to make a better, more perfect version. And I distilled out these concepts. And this was, I think, one of the first times, even before in the actual engine, that I renamed the S object to a unit. As I was creating this 2015 rewrite, I named them units. I named the abilities. These things were they became somewhat distilled concepts. I was trying to make these things pretty straightforward for myself. To see if I could rewrite that engine. And then when I got back to college, I kind of made a really interesting mistake, a really interesting, substantial mistake, that we had one of my software development classes, we had a team of 6 people, open-ended project. You could do anything, but nobody knew what to do. We threw around a couple ideas, and I said, I was playing around in the summer trying to distill out, reinvent the better version of this game engine that I just have had a really fun time writing it, hacking it, playing with it for 2 years, with my roommate and other people. Why don't we make a better, more awesome version of it? And nobody else knew what to do. Nobody else had any project ideas. It's just a class, it's a semester-long class. You write some stuff. And they were kind of like, you know what, sure, why don't we do that? So, I was thinking, we got this team of 6 people. This is great. We're going to make an awesome version of my engine. But when you get to the end of the time, what really happened is that those same people, they worked on it the way that some people work on, like a obligatory job or something like that. There was not, I don't think, the same amount of, they didn't, 2015 summer, when I was working with these really bright programmers, I would come home in the evening, and what did I do in my own spare time? I would work on redistilling how do I want the rewrite of this game engine to be. That is not what these people did. And when they left class, when they left our group meetings, they didn't sit down and say, hey, why don't I work on this game engine and try to make it? And it's totally partly on me too, because I kind of thought, well, why don't I start us out with the code that I had initially been writing? And a lot of them, they looked at that and it was alien and crazy to them that they saw it as a huge amount of code. I was not trying to make it that we would think of it that way. Sometimes for me, as I was trying to sort of learn how to break the code into parts and compartmentalize things so they would be more modular, it ended up creating more files versus years prior to that, when I was starting as a programmer, I would tend to just put everything in one file. And so if you're sitting there and you're looking at like a file browser, you can convince yourself oh my gosh, there's 40 files here. This is really big. And there was not ever, I didn't put myself in a room with them and discuss all of what I had been trying to do and all of what was in all of these files, each and every one all the way through. And so there was just not ever really this point, I don't think, where I made that project into what it could have been. But what happened is we got to the end of the year and all the work that I had done on the engine was now a part of this team project that, I think my father I was chatting with after that, he was saying, technically, if you ever took that engine and did more with it and sort of built onto it and made it into some awesome product that you could sell, then these other 6 people are going to come back to you and say they actually own part of it. And they're right about it, even though I think in some of the Git commit trackers, if you look proportionally at the amount of code submitted, I don't even think the repo's live anymore, so I'm not even going to try to look it up. But I think it was true that I had written substantially more code into that project than the other people. Partly also because I was guilty of saying, why don't I kind of start us off with this brainstorm I'd been doing in the summer. So here I am now, years later, and I'm looking at the brainstorm from that summer. I just happened to find this on a backup drive, just like the 2015 summer version before this class project. And it's really interesting when I look at it because it lays the foundation of defining how my Warsmash RTS engine is made. It is based upon those same fundamental concepts, trying to distill how I want these sort of game engine ideas to go from all the way back then in 2015. And it's just that, I kind of rewrite these ideas until eventually I got fed up with it. And it's interesting too, because when I look back then, kind of the two largest projects that I had going through time became my 2012 big project, which was building a Warcraft 3D model editor that I played around with, and the 2013 big project, which was building a strategy game. And so I guess it kind of makes sense that as those go along through the years, there was eventually this point where I was like, hey, why don't I put them together and make a strategy game that also has Warcraft models and try to make Warsmash? But it's interesting as I go back and look at that stuff, because when I look at like the Arclight, what is that thing called? Arclight Rumble. The Arclight Rumble. They're going to profit. Like Cam, the former Reforged employee guy, said that they're going to make billions of dollars. I don't know this, but he speculated. He speculated. Now that he doesn't work at Blizzard, he speculated that. I read this somewhere. I think, don't quote me on it. Maybe that's not what he said. But my interpretation of what he said was that he speculated that Arclight Rumble is going to make billions of dollars. And when I think about that, and I look at what Arclight Rumble is, that we're selling people, you can pay to have Grom, you can pay to have Jaina, you can pay to have Rend Blackhand or something. Maybe that's not as good of an example because maybe they don't usually have that on Warcraft 3. But like you can pay to have these different characters. You can pay to have Warcraft 3 Grunt, Warcraft 3 Footman, or whatever in this mobile game. Or like the Undead Abomination or something. It suddenly makes me realize that maybe I'm making the same mistake again. If you think about 2015, the class project, I spent all this time distilling out how do I want the game engine to be of my creativity. And then kind of stupidly, I give that to other people so they kind of also own it, so I don't own it anymore. And when I integrate the Warcraft models onto the engine, maybe that's similarly stupid. You look at Warsmash. There is not anybody, I don't think, is there anybody who is going to look at Warsmash and truly believe that I invented all of it? Will that happen? Will there be anyone who says, wow, I bet there's 10 years of history here, while this guy figured out how Warcraft models are formatted and then combined that with a distillation of strategy games written in Java that he had already been working on and then expanded on it? No one is going to look at it that way. They're going to look at it and think, wow, this dork probably just ripped off this code from Blizzard somehow. And it's like a stupid tragedy because it's actually not Blizzard's code, right? And so, like, when I think about this 2015 distillation of what I was trying to do, that had nothing to do with Warcraft 3. This was for a strategy game of two-dimensional spaceships. And yet, the fundamental attempt at distilling how to handle this creativity, how to make what is an ability, what is a unit, it makes me think it's stupid for me to give it to people again and not myself. So, I don't know if I'm ever going to finish Warsmash, but it seems like if I was going to continue, I should probably make something that, go back to the drawing board, go back to these old ideas, the 2015 distillation, trying to be as smart as possible instead of trying to be as Warcraft as possible and trying sort of cursing this thing that becomes like an advertisement for Arclight Rumble and gives $1 million to Bob Kotick or $1 billion to Bob Kotick. It's the realization that my life benefits more if I let that fall away, get rid of that, and go back to the roots of making totally my own thing. And it's interesting how when I opened the Pac-Man thing just as a joke for a couple of minutes, pretty soon I've run into this ghost of the past, the reality that if you're going to spend an inordinate amount of time on your own creativity, you probably ought to own it. And the way to do that is don't play Warcraft. I think that's pretty straightforward. It really kind of is. So that's just kind of my thoughts. It's a brainstorm out loud. It's really interesting. There have been a lot of people for many years telling me that I shouldn't play Warcraft. And I've largely ignored them. But I don't know why. Because it was usually the smart people telling me that. Usually. So, you make of that what you will. But anyway, apparently the code for my Pac-Man game is really hard to track down, but I think I found it. So I'm probably going to go fix my world editor so that I can go, well, it's not even a world editor, it's a grid editor. I can try to fix that so I can draw my grid in peace. It should be good. But beyond that, I think maybe what I ought to do is actually go back to my 2015 distillation of my own strategy game. And I don't know, there's something profound there, because it's like the origin of Warsmash. And what if I make my own RTS where I don't have to deal with other people and I get to say that it's mine and benefit from 10 years of playing with this stuff. And it won't be as good because it won't have Sam Didier's art on it or whatever, but it also won't be an ad for Arclight Rumble, so it won't be helping make Kotick $1 billion. It turns out you don't need their art. If you make totally your own game with totally your own art, and if you're okay with simple art, simple 2D sprite art, you can have a great freaking time. And you can unlock your creativity. And that was originally why I would joke about Warsmash to people, because it's so evident to me that if I took that 2D turn-based idea and I reproduced it in 3D, that it would annihilate Warcraft, like what Warcraft was trying to be in my life. Because what I actually wanted is a creative outlet to just make stuff and kind of have fun. And I feel like I kind of proved my point. Like, in some sense, I got really lazy during the pandemic. I was busy all the time and work and stuff. So I really, really let what I was doing degenerate into something that looked almost identical to the Frozen Throne. But it doesn't have to be that way. And that's the most amazing part of it. That you can kind of just follow your dreams and tell a computer what to do. And I think nothing makes that more obvious than Warsmash, but you can do that. And if you pick your own art formats and stuff, it's easier. It's way easier. Making my own game engine, I think that I hoped that Warsmash would give me mastery over essentially what Blizzard's Warcraft 3 map editor was trying to be, so that I could iterate on it in a fundamental way, the way that I iterate on my own game engine. And although it started that way, I think I'm getting farther and farther away from that because I'm not Blizzard. And because I don't have the Warcraft 3 source code, I can create, I can spend these years making a really good facade for some of the basics. But at the end of the day, it is a facade. It's not the same, and it's not going to be. And if I was making something that intended to not be the same, but had the same level of open-endedness, maybe it would work out better. It's kind of like maybe a mistake in Warsmash that I have not produced for anyone like a Warsmash map editor, and I think that would be something that would add a lot. But it's just, you can when you have source code of something, when you're making a strategy game or you're making like an engine, I mean, it's kind of like the sky is the limit. I've proposed to other people this idea that why doesn't Warcraft let you just make new abilities in a straightforward way instead of a skill copied from channel that fires a trigger in the trigger editor and this nonsense. And that is in Warsmash for me, for the source code level. Obviously, if you'd want to build a user-facing API to do that, but I mean, I think I made Holy Light in like an hour or something, and I didn't even have mana costs. I had to add that to the engine. So think what you could do. Like, it's a different planet, basically, to the world editor. Once you can just go in there and like, I'm going to add a new ability. And it's weird that no one wants that. They want to tell me to go into Warsmash and add reforged model support and add dynamic shadows. They don't want a creative outlet. They want this like weird, never-ending ascension of complexity in their technology. And I think I need to go back to the 2D turn-based sprites where the creativity has less limitations, and play around with that some more and try to do to prove the point Warsmash was trying to prove, that I don't need Warcraft 3 in my life at all, and that given the time that I've spent with Warcraft 3, I could instead do my own thing better. You could prove that same point without Blizzard artwork and without Blizzard formats. Like, no MDX, none of that. Like, just go to another planet. Maybe you store your characters in XML. That's what I did in my engine. The little character art, each character art file was an XML file. It's fine. You can do that. I should probably do that. So maybe that's what I'll do. The future of Warsmash. Maybe it's not Warsmash. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to go finish Warsmash on your own? Are you inspired? You listen to me ramble and you think, man, I thought this guy was going to build me a Warcraft for free. How could he even consider stopping doing that? If that bothers you, build yourself a Warcraft, dude. It's out there. The knowledge is out there how to do it. Okay, I'm speaking from experience. You just do some Googling. What do you need to know? Search it up. It's out there somewhere. Somebody has it. So, I don't know. I don't know the future. I don't know what I'll do. But I just feel like, why does my creative outlet need to be an advertisement for ArcLight Rumble? That just, somehow I don't like that. That shouldn't be that. And I know that if I go back to my own world where I came from, there's no one there. There is no player base for my engine. Other than maybe that one guy who still plays it in the evenings. But I know that guy. I talk to him. I give him tech support sometimes. But other than that, there's no player base. So my point is, there's almost no player base. It's a different world. On Warcraft, we have all the bots and trolls and the people to talk to make us feel good about ourselves, and the discords and this other stuff. And so it's weird because if I go back to my own universe, I'm gonna have more technology fun, but I'm gonna have less social feedback loops from other people motivating me. I wonder how that'll go. But I feel like it's maybe I need a break. Maybe I should do that. Take a break from Warsmash and try to explore, can I prove the same point back on my own planet? I think that sounds like fun. So I might do that. But you guys out there trying to make contributions to Warsmash, stay motivated. Stay motivated. Do whatever you want to do. Absolutely. Just do it. Because Warsmash is MIT licensed until I might change it to GPL. I feel like the Linux gurus were thinking I should do that. And they're probably right about it, but I didn't change it yet. So as far as the world is currently concerned, you could go download all of Warsmash under MIT license right now. You know what that means, do you? Well, maybe you don't. Look it up. Look up what that means. It might mean something. Well, take care, guys. Take care.